guys, 7K is here once again. I'm gonna film something that's been on my heart for 6 years. Recently, over the last year, a lot of people online have been sharing information about that demon face syndrome that's supposedly brand new. This isn't really a new thing for me, but there's like one time in particular, basically 6 years ago to the day, that I witnessed two people with these faces. And I'd like to share that experience because the circumstances that it happened under were completely miraculous. The days leading up to that, it was the week that I had a near death experience and witnessed Jesus Christ. And the very next day, that's when this occurred. And granted, the last 6 years ever since this, I've seen a lot more of these faces, especially when I was working at this rehabilitation hospital during the height of COVID. There was some crazy weird stuff going on there. And I mean, I've seen some weird things my entire childhood. Like, when someone's having a bad fit and you can see the dark in their eyes, you don't see any light, and like like you can't even see their soul there. Yeah, like basically most people can pick up on that kind of stuff. That's been most of my life. But these kind of demon faces I've only really witnessed one time, and I wanted to share that with you guys. It's kind of a longer story. So this was October of 2018. I'll go back a couple days prior to when I saw these faces in a Taco Bell parking lot. And all of it had to do with a UFO, so that's why I find this fascinating. I've shared this story before on one of my other videos, the importance of the power of Jesus' name, deja vu, UFOs. But I'd like to share where it stemmed from and explain the faces of these people. So in October of 2018, I wasn't doing very well. I was in a very rickety, manipulative relationship with a guy who had a really messed up family who he kept trying to bring in. He was a serial cheater and had a tendency to go after younger women. And there were a lot of creeps in this family, and I was trying to figure out how to get out. So I was kind of just numb. But then I had this dream that in the middle of the night I was like pulled out of my body and I floated above my house, and I was pulled out by like this angel type guy. He looked like an angel, but it's like I recognized his face, like I had met him before, like I'd seen him before in dreams. He looked like family, and he was pulling me up and up and up and up and up, and asking me if I was ready. And I turn around and look behind me, and I realize, like, the planet's right behind me. I'm, like, floating above it. I think I'm gonna die. I don't want to die. I'm not ready to die yet. I don't want to die. And this thing dropped me, and I fell backwards and then, like, slammed into my body and woke up with all this pain, choking on myself like apnea. I do that sometimes. I stop breathing when I'm sleeping sometimes. That's been going on for years. My dad's got that, and it scares the crap out of me. But I woke up from this, and I was like, what the heck just happened? And the next night, I had the same dream, but it was minor. It was only for like a second, and I didn't get as far. And I was scared. Like, am I like dying in my sleep or something? Or like, is something trying to take me out? And so, with the situation I was in, I started praying to God, even though I didn't know who God was. And I started saying, God, if you're real and you created life with a purpose, you created me with a purpose, and there's a point to all of this, please show me that you're real. Show me that I have a purpose. I actually was crying about this. I was basically like screaming about this. It's like, please show me that there's a point to all of this and that you created me with a purpose. Because if none of this means anything, the amount of stress that I'm dealing with from living with this person and their family, I told God, it's like, I'm going to die. I'm either going to die from killing myself, or I'm going to die from the amount of stress giving me cancer. I don't think that this is where I belong. I know it. This is not the place for me. If you're real, please show me this, because I'm about to give up. Like, I was literally threatening to kill myself because I couldn't see a way out of this situation. Every time I'd get a paycheck, this guy would manipulate me for more money out of it, bring in all these people to sublet the apartment so that he could run off with $1,000 every month. I couldn't find a way out of this, and I was afraid I was going to die here. And it's funny that when I made that threat on my life, it's like God heard that and challenged me. He decided, oh, well, you want to kill yourself? Well, I'll do it for you. So the next day, I went over to my folks' farm, and the boyfriend brought his dog, and the dog was wandering around the cows, and the cows were getting nervous of the dog and starting to stampede. And granted, this dog was like 14 years old, blind, stumbling around, couldn't see what was happening, and she was a Shih Tzu. She was gonna get trampled. So I tried to get the boyfriend to go get the dog. He wouldn't even move. So I jumped off the deck to go get the dog from the cows. And this deck is like 8 feet high. I've had no problem before, but when I did it this time, something popped in my spine, and I had severe pain for several hours up and down my spine, and it was going up down my legs, and I could not stop my legs to do this restless leg thing. And so when I left my parents' house, I had to go to the hospital. I couldn't stop the spasming. The boyfriend was very irritated by it. He brought me there. I was responsive, but I couldn't stop flailing because of the spasm. It hurt, and I was almost about to cry, and basically just telling this lady, I gotta check my spine. And she eventually came in and is like, what do you want? What do you want? And I told her, like, I want this to stop hurting, but I want to know why it's hurting. I want x-rays. Apparently, she didn't look at my chart. She came back in with a giant needle. I was totally out of it, just spasming everywhere. I just wanted it to stop. She said, okay, turn over. And I wasn't really being very cooperative or responsive because of the spasm. She asked my boyfriend, who'd been with me for 4 years, how long he'd been with me and if it was okay if I had this. He said, yeah, cool, just get us out of here. So the lady goes to try and give me this shot. I ask her what it is. She tells me the word was Dilaudid. I didn't understand it at the time. I know what it is now. I didn't know what that was, and I wasn't really comprehending anything because I just wanted the spasm to quit. She gave me the shot, and then she discharged me. And on the way out the door, there was a nurse that stopped me because I was like falling down the stairs. And he's like, are you okay? Do you need to go back upstairs? I said, they're discharging me. He mentioned, no, it seems like you need to stay here. Maybe you should come back upstairs. Go downstairs, check with the lady, and then maybe you should come back up. I didn't come back up. My boyfriend wouldn't have anything of it. So I discharged. She dragged me down the street. I threw up on the way to the car. When we got home, I threw up in the front yard in front of the living room. I couldn't go to work. He was very pissed off about it. He's like, well, I gotta go to work, bye. And just leaves me there. I go into my bedroom and I lay down on the bed and I kept wanting to throw up and then pass out and throw up and pass out. And at one point of this passing out, like I kept feeling my eyes rolling into the back of my head, and I had no motivation to breathe. I already felt like giving up on everything, and he just kind of dumped me here. I had no way back to the hospital unless I called 911, and I was so tired and everything was spinning and I was exhausted and the spasm hadn't even really stopped. And so I laid there and couldn't get my chest to breathe for me. And so I kept blacking out and like feeling like I was being pulled out of my body and then slamming back into it. And like waking up and like choking on myself again, and then my eyes would roll back and I'd pass out again, and that just continued to happen. Well, the final time of it, I was pulled out of my body and I wound up going to this place which felt kind of like a purgatory area, like a waiting room, where like it was dark but also clouded, and there were people there. There were souls there that were happy to see me. They were like, "Yay!" They were like excited that I had made it home. And it's like I knew some of these people. Like I felt like my uncle was there. Felt like people who like were waiting for something. They couldn't go anywhere yet. They were like waiting here, and they didn't really have a body. They just had a energy. And I eventually got pulled past this place through these gates, and I wound up in this area that it was all cloudy, but then the clouds cleared, and it was like these flowers and these green fields everywhere. The flowers were singing. Like every blade of grass, every flower there was like whistling, vibrating a song. It's like multiple notes coming out of each flower, and all of them were singing in harmony. And they were like, it's like the way the light hit them made them like prisms, like these rainbows were coming off of them, and they were singing to the light, to the sun. That was like the sun was wandering back and forth. It didn't have like a specific like up and down thing. It would just walk, and wherever the light would go, the flowers would lean towards it and like and they would like change their song, and it was really fascinating. And then I got taken to this place that was like a crystalline, pearlescent, golden palace that was like a library. It was like a cathedral, and it was like a library, and there were all these books in it. And there was like a podium up front, and on the podium was a book that was open, and it was being like written and read and examined. And I wasn't allowed to read it. I wasn't allowed to look at it. I think it felt like, I don't know if it was my book or like, my life, or if it was the book of life overall. I have absolute, or the Bible. I have no idea what this book was, but I couldn't read it. And there were all these other books on the shelves. And as I would look at the books, they had gold text that was bright and glowing, and the text would move. And it wasn't in English. It was in like a different language that I've never seen before, like an ancient language. The text would move, like it was being written while I was there. I don't know how to explain it. Like it was already written, but it was being written at the same time. And it was like whispers. Like you could hear the lives of these people, and it's like each one of these books was somebody's life. It was like their story of their life. And all the text was moving, and the ceiling was all crystalline and like rainbow because the way the light would come through it, and there were like gold facets holding it up, and the floor was like pearlescent, like pearl. It was rainbow, and it was just like opal. It was just gorgeous. I finally came out of this building because there was nothing else I could do in here, and I went into this field, this green field, and I saw this gigantic tree, like the biggest deciduous tree I've ever seen in my life, like a big old oak tree. And there were all these children gathered around underneath the canopy of the tree. And there were kids of all ages until like maybe 7 or so, 5, 7. I was guided here by this angel guy that had brought me up here, and the angel guy like put it in my head. There was a knowing that these children were all kids that died before they could sin. Basically, it was like innocent children. And I was to understand that there were kids here that I was related to, like siblings and family and stuff. And then I realized that my own son was there because I miscarried a child, which is part of the reason that led me into this relationship I was trying to get out of, was the depression from miscarrying. And so I met my child there, my son, and we didn't say anything, but I remembered him, and all of these, like I recognized him, and all of these memories and thoughts of what happened started to flood back. And it's like they weren't even mine. It was like I was looking at them from a third person perspective. And I just felt all this shame and unforgiveness in my heart for losing him, and anger at the father. And as I felt that, I began to slip, like I was being sucked backwards, like out of this realm into a dark place. And then it would finally materialize again, and I'd see the child, and I'd see all these other people, and it's like they were trying to fight for me to come back. And every time I would get angry or sad or depressed, I'd suck back into this dark realm again. And it felt horrible and lonely. And then, like the last time I was coming into this heavenly realm, the the child and the angel were fighting for me, and the child said, and I remember specifically, he said, "You have to forgive. You have to let go, or else you won't be able to come home again." And I never forgot that. And I'm like, why do I gotta forgive him? Why do I have to let go? And I couldn't accept this. And so I, like, the pain of it, the pain of that reality just washed over me, and I got totally sucked out of this place. And I was now in this like dark, this dark realm where I was alone. It wasn't quiet, but I was alone. There were people that were screaming in the background, that were just miserable, crying in the background, and it sounded like you could hear them through the halls of caverns, and they were somewhere in like a room, in a chamber, in a cavern way down. It felt like everybody was in separate caverns in some long corridor, and you could hear them all like you were in an insane asylum, but instead of in a hospital, you were like in like a cavern, and you could like hear them just totally miserable. And I felt so tortured and so alone here, and I didn't know how to get out of here. I was so sad. I was so upset about this, and I didn't know how to get out of here, and I finally started praying for the one. I said, I want to see the one. I want to meet the one. I need to know the man who's behind all of this, the man of light, the man who died on the cross. I need to see the one. I need to see the purpose, the light. I need to see the salvation. And then I finally whispered, Jesus. And in this dark realm, there was a light that started to open up. It was like a pinpoint. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then this light just like took over my whole view. Everything in front of me was glowing golden light. And then I saw the shadow of a man in like robes or like a dress or something walking towards me in the light. And I was actually kind of like trying to make out his face, but every time I'd look at him, he was just so bright that it was like burning my cornea, which weren't there. But it was like so bright, it was burning me, but I had to see his face. So I'm like really looking at him. And the second I felt like I could see him, I looked away, like in shame. And then all of a sudden, this giant foot that's like the size of a mattress lands in front of me, and he's got a sandal on, and I'm looking at his skin, and his skin is like bronze color, like copper, like bronze, golden brown. And then I realized like there was light emanating from within his skin as I'm looking up his leg, like trying to look at him, and there's light coming out of his toes. And then so I'm looking around and I'm realizing the light that I saw was not a beam of light and the guy's shadow was in it. The light's not behind him. The light was coming from within him. It was coming from inside his skin. And so I tried to look up to his face so that I could see it, and it was really hard to make out because of how bright it was. But as I was looking, I realized it was the face of Jesus Christ. It's not like the image that all the Catholic churches, a lot of the images of Christ are not accurate. They're not like the same guy. They're not exactly the same, but like once you see his face, once you see him, you know him. And it's like, I know this guy. I've met him before. I know him from before I was born. And and he came to me and he was crying. He was crying with sadness for me. It's like he felt what I felt, and he didn't want me to feel that anymore. He was like, he saw me and he looked like a little disappointed, a little sad, and then he started crying for me, for my pain. Then he started laughing through the tears and smiling at me through those tears like it's okay. I felt this love and this forgiveness that I've never felt from any human being, not even my own father. Not anybody. I've never felt this before from a human. And this guy was so simply beautiful, but just because the love in his eyes. I've never felt that before. And he offered me his hand. He put his hand out towards me and smiled at me, and I took it. I took his hand, and then I like warped and hit my body, and it hurt so bad. I started breathing, and I was like choking on myself. I turned over, and I'm like like vomiting stuff up. Like stuff is coming out of me. It hurt so bad to have my heart start again. My whole body was in pain, but I felt more mental clarity than I've ever felt my entire life. Sorry. I've never felt so clear. I felt like brand new. I felt like I was who I was born to be when I was born, and then I forgot who that was. I got corrupted by the world. And then when this happened, it's like I came back to that original of an understanding of who I am. Simple individuality. Like even the first time I went over to my parents' house and I saw him fighting and stuff because they were drinking at the time, and I was like, what is this? Like I didn't even recognize it. Everything outside, every piece of living blade of grass was beautiful to me. And I could see the ugliness. I could see like the pain, the demons on people's faces. So when that happened, it blew my mind. Oh, I never mentioned that after I had this experience, I went back to the hospital when I woke up, and they had to give me like bags of fluid. The girl that gave me the shot of Dilaudid actually got fired. That's not what I wanted to happen, but they told me I could sue the hospital if I wanted to, but that was not my intention. So I was up all night at the hospital recovering from this. Didn't get much sleep. The next day, I started to research about Jesus and about near-death experiences to try and see if other people had witnessed the same thing, if their version of heaven was similar. I was trying to understand that. And I came across something. I used to be very new age. The last thing I was researching before this was like aliens and like Project Bluebeam and stuff. And so like the one of the first things I found the next day was a video that was explaining that aliens that we were seeing, a lot of it of course was like government, but the real ones that people had seen or that are out there in the other dimensions, that they're very real, but they're not for our good. They're actually fallen angels. And the whole thing just like clicked. And I realized like, oh my god, this is like occult stuff that they've been trying to teach us. Holy shit, it blew my mind. And so while I started to research that, the video started to lag out. I started to feel like I was being watched when that was happening, and it was really weird. This is where the demon faces come in, okay? This is the day after I have this experience, seeing Jesus Christ, having a near-death experience. So I'm looking this up. My video and my whole phone starts to wig out. I'm starting to feel watched. You know, like when like a predator is behind you and you just know it? Then my roommate came in, who was actually a really good friend of mine. Thank God he was living with me at the time, because he was the only person that was there to kind of help me recover from the situation, because my boyfriend was gone. And when he came back, he was actually pissed that I was back in the hospital again, because now it was something else he had to deal with. So this roommate basically kind of helped save my life. He said he was hungry and he actually wanted to get Taco Bell. He was curious if I wanted some too. So I said, yeah, sure. I dropped everything, but we drove to the Taco Bell, which was right down the street from my house. I think there were four of us there. It was the boyfriend, his brother, and then the roommate. Pulled up to an old, like, blue Cadillac or something, and there were two elderly people that were in the front seat, on the bench seat, and they were turning to me, and the way that they were looking at me, I have never seen anybody look at me like this before. I have never seen faces like this before. These two old people were terrifying. Their faces were like contorting while I was looking at them. They would not stop looking at me. They would not blink. They wouldn't break eye contact. It's like their eyes were blue, but you couldn't even see the color. It was just like their pupils were so big and there was no light in their eyes. We got out of the car. We walk up to like the door of the Taco Bell, getting ready, making sure we have everything. And I keep looking at this couple in this like Cadillac, and they won't stop looking at me. And their faces are contorted, like their eyes are twisted, like pulled. It was like a demon face from a movie, like with all the makeup on and the wrinkles and everything. I don't understand why like these people looked like zombies. They were like completely possessed. God was telling me in my gut that they were puppets, that they weren't even like really there, that their soul wasn't even really there, and they were being controlled by something. So in my gut, I'm like, okay, well, what are they being controlled by? Like, if they're puppets, where's the puppeteer? And it's like there's something else watching me here, and I knew it. It wasn't just them. So I'm looking around trying to find if there's anybody else. Like, am I gonna get jumped right now? And so God was telling me to look up. I'm told to look up, and I look up directly where God tells me to look up, and basically over my house, where we just came from, is a very low flying UFO looking vehicle. It was a silver disc that the sun was lighting it up, and it was shining off of it. It was reflecting off of it. You could see it like pew, like in the sky, sitting there so bright from the sun. And it was like stationary, but like could kind of see it like swiveling a little bit. I was like, dude, I wouldn't stop looking at this thing. I'm tapping on my roommates. I'm like, dude, UFO, dude, look at this thing. I said it loud enough that like there were people coming out of the Taco Bell and more people walking in the Taco Bell. So they're like, huh? And people turn around and everybody starts turning around. There were like 8 to 12 people, I can't remember, because there were so many people walking by. And at least 6 of them turned and went to look at this thing. And when everybody started to turn and look up at it, that's when it did a cloak thing that I've never seen before. Right when everybody turned to try and look at it. Let's say it's like this, it's like a disc like this, and then all of a sudden it cloaks from like this little windshield wiper goes around the whole thing. Like Harry Potter when he throws the cloak of invisibility on him, it like goes from one side to the other. And it wasn't like Predator where the whole thing cloaks like at once. It was kind of digitally like that. It was very weird, like digital, but it went from one side to the other, like a clock. It went from top down clockwise, underneath, and then back up to the top. And as it did that, a poof of smoke started going, out from underneath it like a fog machine, like heavy amounts of smoke, just pew, pew, pew. You could see them coming out. And this thing was not very high up. This thing was pretty low to the ground, and it just made this big cloud underneath it, and it disappeared in the cloud. And that was the only cloud in the sky, and everybody's watching. Like, not everybody saw this device, but they definitely saw the cloud like coming out of nowhere, just being blown by like a piece of machinery, billowed out, and then all of a sudden there was just this fog, and everybody watched that in front of the Taco Bell. And we went to order. My appetite was totally gone. I sat by the window and kept staring at that one cloud in the entire sky where there weren't any clouds. And yeah, that was the only time that I've ever seen demon faces, like that full on demon face thing. I saw quite a few of them on the people that were working at the rehab hospital that I was at during the height of COVID, when they were trying to force these shots on people. Everybody kept getting sick. There were people were going through hell in that situation. So like I've I've seen these kind of faces here and there on people. Even when I was like a little kid, you kind of see when things are distorted. Yeah, ever since I had this event meeting Jesus Christ, the next day I saw these demon faces and this UFO. It felt in my soul that the devil was involved, that they were watching me. I felt totally insane because I didn't understand, like, how does anybody have the power to have spirits possess people, to watch you through it, to follow you, and have a UFO at the same time? And when everybody looks, it disappears. Like, if the government was involved in this, how are they even doing this? Like, how is this like mind control or something? And I realized, like, a lot of it's the devil, a lot of it's the power of evil, and that we've signed up to go along with this. Our country has signed up to go along with these plans. Again, I'm a logical person. I can be fantastical, fantasy, what do they call it? Magical thinking. Duh, I like to kind of have an open mind, but the logic in my head wants to try and sort out exactly how that was done, and wants to dismiss any form of connection between the demonic faced people and the UFO that I saw. Naturally, I want to say that there's no connection between the two. Naturally, because like I don't see one, I don't know how it's happening, I don't know how it's occurring, but it is happening. I know the devil's involved in a lot of this. It makes me wonder what kind of technology we have to assist with this type of stuff. But it felt like I finally witnessed Jesus. I was this close to dying. And I finally figured out after that, had a revelation that the aliens are fallen angels. And then right when that happens, I get a visitation from a UFO with these demon type people, and the entire time I felt like it wanted to kill me. It felt like it knew that I found Christ, and it did not want me to have that in my life. It wanted me to denounce that. It was like warning me. Again, I can't I don't know how any of this works. I don't know why this happened like this, but I had to share this. This is the first time I have ever shared my testimony of how I witnessed Jesus Christ. I've never shared this before. Only to like friends and like people at my work. Whenever I felt really called to share my testimony, I have, but I haven't put it online. Like, I never forgot, and I never wanted to forsake him because he saved me. And because what happened the next day, that experience was evil. And the only other times I had experiences with those type of vehicles afterwards, the only thing that has ever saved me from those experiences is calling upon the name Jesus Christ and Archangel Michael. So I know it works, and I know it's more powerful. I just felt the need to share that. Don't know why, but I had to. I've been wanting to share my testimony for 6 years since it happened. And I didn't hop back online until I had a dream about everybody in the future having a device on the back of their wrist and a lens in their right eye that all hooked up to like the satellite. It was like this moon satellite space station thing that people lived at, and they watched everything. And this girl found this Jesus necklace. The kids found it, that she had it, and she told them what the name was. They said they recognized him before they were born. And she told them what the name was. They started to sing it, and she got arrested for having a Jesus necklace. And it wasn't even really Jesus, it was Buddy Christ from the Clerks movie. But this was the only picture of Jesus that she could find, was going to this museum and finding this, and she stole it. And that was the dream that got me back online. I wanted to share my testimony, but I was very nervous to come back online for a while, especially once COVID happened, because that was a warning that God gave me back in 2009 about that situation. And so I had to get closer to God and sit and think and focus on my family and trying to tell people about the dream that I had had. And then when I had the dream about Jesus being illegal, that's when I hopped back online and I realized I really should tell people about my testimony with Christ. I've just been too nervous to. And now I'm at a state in my life where I really don't care. I have nothing left to lose and I have everything to gain for him. And that's all that matters anymore. I don't care. I just wanted to share that. Don't be afraid to come to Christ, because it was the most love I've ever felt in my entire life. And after that happened, I got bombarded with demonic attacks and UFOs, evil trying to convince me to come back to it. When you find Christ, you're gonna get attacked really hard, especially if you're involved in occultic stuff. It's gonna come after you. And that's even more of a reason to come closer to Christ, because it's the only thing that works. I've tried almost all of it, and literally the only thing that saved my life then, brought me out of that horrible state, protected me from UFOs when I've seen them, protected me from abduction dreams, helped keep me calm, helped get me back into a state where I need to be, to focus, to hear him better, is by calling on his name. Dude, it works. I mean, granted, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life. I never believed in any of this stuff for a long time, and if you would have forced it on me, I'd be friends with anybody at the time, but if you would have pushed it on me, I probably wouldn't have respected you. I wouldn't have talked to you. So my point is, I'm never going to tell you what to believe. It's just after 6 years, I'm going to explain that this is what happened to me. This is what saved my life and saved my soul. And I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to let go for him. I've seen how dark it can get. And these occult promises of fame and fortune and ego, and all it really gives you is personality disorders and sickness. I gotta go. I just felt like it was time for me to share it. I love you guys. If you've had any similar experiences, please share them in the comments. Have a great day. Bye.